Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna look at creating a panel-to-panel interactive comic of this comic page. As you can see, there's no type on it. We're gonna actually put interactive type, or otherwise known as live text, and also we're gonna add certain layers to certain panels to add animation and interactivity. So I created this in Procreate on the iPad, and also use Photoshop on the desktop as well. I think just before time's sake, I needed it quickly for a trade show. But the basically it's flat art, except for there's no text, and there is the certain elements are in layers. There's a fully rich media version of this that I will do in another video, which actually goes from the panels are all separated. But for this purposes, there's a stone here, as you can see, time stone here, a larger version, the glow on the gauntlet, and also blood that will animate as it squirts out. So we'll do all the we'll export these as separate layers, and also we're gonna do the animation online using the Comic Machine platform. So let's take a look at the files. These are all the exported files that we'll be using. The first layered element is the blood. This is a PNG transparent layer, so all the gray is see-through on the when we place it into the canvas. This is the glowing gauntlet section. The layered image is a dodge layer, so it will show up as a dark element. So I had to export the entire area, not just the glow part. There's the larger stone, smaller stone, and that's the large canvas, the large background that we'll be using. I can't make it any smaller. There's also, I forgot to mention previously, the sound effects that I created in Photoshop. I think now with the text being added, you can create it in Procreate as well. And those are on transparent layers as well. So here I am, I'm logged in, as you can see up here. I'm going to create a new comic, call it layered panel to panel. So I start off with a blank page, which is the cover. So we don't have a cover, it's just a tutorial on the going panel to panel. So we're not going to actually do a cover, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually do the interactivity for the each panel. So this new version of the Comic Machine, you can add layers in between existing layers. So we're just going to first do the motion between the panels, and then add the layers, and then add the text. So I go to my files, and I want to add this one. This is the entire, if you can see here, the entire background for the comic. It's a double page spread, I guess. I'm going to upload it. It'll place it at a 1-to-1 ratio, which is the canvas is 1024 by 768. So we want to probably focus on one panel to start off with, and we're going to have to reduce the size since it's so big. We're going to use the slider down here, which makes it a lot easier to adjust the size. Alright, I'm just going to do 2 frames, and then I'm going to speed it up because it's basically the same for all of them. So you can adjust it to almost the size with the slider, and then make sure the lock aspect ratio is locked, and then you can use I want to make it bigger actually. You just click and hold it there, and it will adjust at a slower pace. It's close enough. Alright, So I want to actually fade in at this position. As you can see, the start and end. The end is still at the size and position that I placed it at. So I want to make it the same for both start and transition, start and end. But I want the opacity to be 0 so that it fades in, and I'll give it a duration of 0.5. I always like easing in and out, so I'll use that. And I'll hit the wait button, which means that a wait button will appear, and you have the reader would have to click it before going to the next one. Let's preview that. So it just basically fades in. So I want to set the I want to actually do a transition, meaning move it after the click. So to do that, I have to set the start and end transition, and then when I do that, this add transition shows up. So you have to remember to do both. And when you add transition, this is actually a new action layer. So if I go back, you can see that a new action layer is added. So it's an action layer of the same image file. And what I want to do is, this is the next frame that it's supposed to go to, so I want to scroll it down, and I have to considerably enlarge it more because it's a bit smaller. So obviously the higher the resolution, the less pixelization you'll get on the frame. Okay. I'll make it as close as possible. Oh, and you want to lock the aspect ratio. Alright. And you can see that the start is grayed out because that's the start is actually what the end of the last action layer was. So the new end is right here, and from the end of the last action layer to the beginning to the end of this one. So, sorry, I'm gonna say 0.5 seconds, half a second. So it'll move from that panel to this panel in 0.5 seconds. Use in and out, and I'll hit the wait button. And then I have to save the setting and then add transition. So basically, as you can imagine, I do the same thing. I move it down to the next one. I'll give it a 0.5 duration for the move. Hit set, ease in and out. You can keep it at ease out if you want. Hit the wait button. So it's the same thing throughout. Add transition, and then I will move it over to this one. I have to obviously reduce it in size. I guess, I mean, it depends on you, but I would either choose the width or the height to maximize the optimize the screen. So from here on, I'm just going to speed up the video so that you don't have to watch the entire thing. So I've finished the movements. As you can see, this one image I edited 8 times here, so it moves from panel to panel. The last edit, it was a slower time delay duration because it swipes from the right to left, a panning sort of move. But I'll show you in the preview. I'll just preview the entire comic. So I'm clicking it as the button shows up. The next button there. You can see the layers are missing of the the time stone, the text, sound effects, and all other moving layers. So we have 8 movements for each of the 8 panels on this double page spread. But what we want to do now is to add black frames to frame each panel. This is an option, of course. So each of these panels are different proportions, vertical, horizontal. So you have the option of adding black borders on either side or on all four sides. So what we're going to do is start with the first action layer and see what kind of framing we want. We probably want a black border from the top to here, and also at the bottom from here to here. So I've got that layer open. I'm going to add an image layer of the top and bottom crop or frame. And as you can see, it goes to the top left corner as it's placed. The top left corner of the image is placed at the top left corner of the screen. This is the entire image that I've imported, so we probably want to scale it down so it's a bit smaller, and bring it right to the this edge here. So it's up to you whether you want to crop out this intrusion here or just leave it open. I'm going to crop it out, so probably get a little larger. So there you go. So the previous this panel appeared in faded in at a 0.5 second, so I'm going to mimic that at 0.5 as well, and I'm going to do a negative 0.5 on the delay so that it actually coincides with the fade in of the panel underneath, so there's no delay. I'll do a 0.0 opacity at the beginning, and then have it faded into the end. So what's important now is I've set the position and size of this this frame, but I didn't do the end transition. So I want to copy the start transition, the start position and size. So it's the same. So it just fades in basically. Now if I preview it, actually before I do that, as you can see down here, there is a wait before this happens. I don't want this wait. I don't want this to happen at the same time as this layer, because I put a negative 0.5. I don't want to wait. So I'm going to take off the wait and put the wait after the frame appears. Alright, so you can see these two happen at the same time, and then there's the wait button happens. So I'm going to preview the page. So it just appears, and as you can see, the what's happening is the frame is not disappearing. What you got to do is on the frame layer, you want to remove it after one click. So after the wait click, after this wait appears, I have to click to advance it. When I click it, this would disappear. So if I preview it, as you can see, it is not there anymore. I think the next few panels are fine, but I'll do one more demo before I automatically. So this one is a vertical format panel, so I want two black borders on the left and right. So before I do anything, I can see that the weight is already taken off here. I'm going to add an image, and I'll use the one that says crop sides. So it goes in at size as, so what we have to do is reduce the dimensions so that it fits the panel. Just a little bit smaller. As you can see, as I mentioned before, you can use these arrows here to actually do some fine tuning. Alright, so that fits, so I'll just move it into place. And I'll do the same as I did last time, 0.5 duration, negative 0.5 delay, opacity at 0, and I'll copy the position and size to the end. So this will just appear, and I'll put in a weight, ease in and out, and I want to remove after one click. So that was right here. So these two should appear at the same time, and then it would this black frame would disappear after the click. As you see, that appeared. It should disappear in the next click. Yeah, there you go. So I put in all the frames now, and so let's preview it. These last two panels didn't need frames. You see that both sides were blacked out, top and bottom. This one didn't need it. This one didn't need it, or neither does this one. So the next thing I'm going to do is to add layers on top of the panels where the script demands it. Number one is the blood squirting from Stark's wound, and I'll try to animate that. Number two is the stones glowing in Thanos's fist. The number three is the stone floating in Doctor Strange's hand, and then a smaller stone that would actually float from one side of this panoramic frame to the other side. So I'll start off with the blood. So the question is where to insert this blood. I believe it's in the third edit of this main panel. Now if I put the blood in here, it would appear, and as you can see, edit 3 here, then the frame would appear. So we probably want the frame to appear first before the blood appears, so we want to place it after this layer, but we don't want the weight, so we'll take the weight off and put it on the blood. So at this point we're going to add an image layer and go to that blood file. Again, this is a PNG file, and it's a transparent PNG. 24 has full color, but if you export the file with a blank layer underneath, you get transparency. So export it in an oversized dimension. What we want to do is size it down using the anchors. Because it's small, we can use the anchors very easily, so that fits. You can see there's two blood marks, one at the entry and one at the exit. So this is where it's going to end up at. So I want to copy those to the end dimensions and position. So right now, if I just leave it as is, it will just appear. But I want to add a little bit of animation. So at the start, what I'm going to do is take off the lock aspect ratio. And what this does is that these two are not sized in proportion anymore, the width and height. So when I grab the anchors, I can actually squeeze it a bit. So I can have it squirt out. So it's a bit of animation there. So right now I don't have any duration, so in which case if I did that it would just appear. So I want to add in, let's say 0.5 seconds, no delay, because I want this frame to appear first and then have this happen. Maybe at the beginning I wanted to have it at 0.5, so at a 0.5 opacity, so it appears like it's fading in. And you can do this, you can choose an ease to your liking, but I prefer the ease in and out. And then I'll put in a weight. Now if I go back and look at what's happening here. So yeah, these two happen at the same time. The layer moves to the right panel position, the frames come in, and then the blood squirts out. We can preview that. See if it's working. Yeah, so you can see that it happened a little bit too slow, you know, blood squirts a little faster. So maybe 0.2 seconds. Yeah, so that's about right. So the next one I want to add is the glove, the stones in the glove glowing. I believe that's edit number 4. But again, I don't want to put it after this frame because I want the frame, the black frames to appear first. So I'm going to click on this layer. I'm going to take off the weight and then add the image, which is the glow. It's uploading. So it's going to be a lot bigger. So we want to size it with the lock aspect ratio on so that it sizes in proportion. This is going to be tricky. I think in the future upgrades we have to figure out some tool to help size this right. One trick you can do is to, because the start and end is at a different position, I'm going to copy the position and size to the end, and then at the start I'm just going to move it out of the way so that when I click the end I can see how well it fits. So I think it moves over a bit. That's close enough. And I'll copy the end position and size to the beginning. And so I want this to fade in. Probably 0.5. This might go to duration. And the start opacity should be 0. And I'm going to choose it, fade in and out, and then add a weight after. So I want to, depending if I have any text after that, I want to remove this after a click so it doesn't persist for the other panels. Which reminds me, I should do that for the blood squirt too. Depending on how much, if any text comes after this, it might be like a 2-click before it is removed. Let's preview it. So at this point, I'm gonna add that stone, that time stone, into Doctor Strange's hand, and I believe it's edit number 6. As you can see, it's a close-up, so I'm gonna. And there's actually no frame, so this is the right layer to add the stone, that action, that transparent image layer to. So you can see the stone is a bit too large, so I'm going to scale it down a bit. And so what I want to do is actually make it bob up and down as if it was floating. So it's a neat little trick again, especially for objects that are flying. I'm going to copy the dimensions of the start position and size to the end, but at the end I'm going to actually adjust the position, the Y position, which is up and down. If I go down, if I click here, it moves up, and if you can see that it's if I click on the start and end, it actually goes up and down. But it's going to be smoother than that. I'm going to say a duration of 1 second between for each move, and to actually loop that action, you use a repeat of -1 and do an auto reverse so that it goes up and then reverses and goes back down, up and down, and vice versa. I'll use ease in and out, and this is important to actually ease in and out for this type of action because you don't want it to look jerky. You want it to be smooth up and smooth down. And I put in a weight. I think I've got everything here. Yeah, I've got the weight, and I want to remove it after 1 second. 1 click, I mean. So you can see I already took out the weight on the previous layer, so this will happen automatically, and then the weight would come in. Now let's preview it. There's a blood squirt. The stones light up. There you go. And then you go back to that one. So the last layer I want to add is this this last panel, where it's a panoramic panel where I'm going to actually pan over, but I want the stone in his hand to actually pan with the camera movement. So I'm going to go to that action layer and add in that small stone. It's probably going to be the right size. And I'm going to move it into position over his hand. And I'm actually going to have it just appear as the camera moves down to him. So I am going to add a weight after that. Oops, I forgot the copy over the, this is very important, copy over the position and the size. So what I want to do is, so the camera's going to pan down to this panel, and then the stone is just there. What I want to do is actually, after the weight, is to pan this panel over to the left and have the stone pan as well. So what I'm going to do is click on this on the base layer and then add a transition, which would add a transition at the top of the layer of the action layer stack. And it's created. If I, this is edit number 5 here, you can see it's right at the top after the weight. Click on it again, and we're just going to physically move it over to Thanos here, and I am going to check the position, X position, the X position. Actually, no, the Y position. The Y position at the start is 1789. Sorry, 1788. It should be the same at the end, so I'm going to adjust it so it actually moves horizontally without going up and down. And I'll make it a 2-second pan. Alright, and do ease in and out. And before I do anything else, I am going to move the stone at the same time. Alright. So I'm gonna, it's to do a transition again, you have to set the start and end input values, and then this would show up. Okay. Now I want to move the end position into Thanos's hand. Right, so I'm just going to move it over there. This is where Doctor Strange's hand would be at the beginning of the move, and this is where it would end up there. And if you remember, it was a 2-second duration. Ease in and out, and I want a negative delay, -2, so that it happens at the same time as the background move. And I'll add a weight here. Let's take a look at the layer stack. Yeah, so that's about right. So let's preview that. So if I click it, both, as you can see, it moves right into his hand. So the next thing we want to do is to add sound effects, and not only just static, but we can add a bit of motion to it to give it some life. As of now, the Comic Machine does not support other typefaces other than the dialogue typeface. We most definitely will in the future. But for now, you have to create the type for the sound effects in Photoshop or other sort of text imaging layer imaging program, such as Procreate. I think Procreate does text now as well. And then you'd save it out as a PNG 8 or PNG 24, or have it compressed in some other like tiny PNG website. But for now we've already created the text. We want to add sound effects for the blade. Want to add it after the frame comes in. So because we wanted the frame to appear first. So I'm going to take off the weight on this frame and then add the sound effects. Let's see, it's a shing sound. So it's a bit big. I wanted to end up about here and about this size. I'm going to do the same thing as we did for the blood, to have it swipe over or expand. So I'm going to copy over the position and size to the end, and then at the start I'm going to take off the lock aspect ratio and then squeeze it. And do maybe 0.3, so to give it a bit of life. And maybe have it sort of fade in a bit. So start off at opacity at 0.5, and probably want to ease in so to make it quicker at the end. And then we'll add the weight after this, and then also we want to remove it after the click. So we'll preview it. Yeah, could probably make it a little bit quicker. That sounds good. So I'm going to do one more example of sound effects that expands out on this frame here, where the blade gets ripped off. So first of all, I'm going to take off the weight here because I don't want a weight to happen. I want the sound effects to happen and then the weight. I'm going to add an image. Even though it's text, it's an image. Here you go. I'm going to size it down here, copy the dimensions and size to the end. So at the beginning I wanted to reduce the size so it actually pops out. Okay, and again I'm gonna, maybe I'll make the opacity all the way down to 0 and 0.3 duration, and ease in. Actually, I'll do ease in and out. And add the weight here, and then delete the image after the click. So I'm going to preview that. There you go. In this panel, I want to add a whir sound effects, but I'm just going to use the text engine. So I'm in this layer options already. I'm going to take off the weight and then add a text layer. And to make it a sound effect, you can see there's like a balloon and all that, is to take off the tail, make it light on blank, which means it takes away the bubble, and then you can make it bold so that looks like a sound effect. I'm gonna add a whir text on it, and yeah, so once I save it, you have all the transitions that you can use as if it was an image layer. So I'm gonna have it expand out. Make it smaller to begin with. And I'll scale it to 0. And I can't remember how long it took for it to, let me just check here. If you check here, it appears in 0.5 seconds. So I'm going to make the sound effects appear in 0.5 seconds and do a negative 0.5 so that it coincides with the appearance of the glow. I'll do in and out and then add a weight and remove after 1. I think for text layers it automatically removes after 1 unless you specify something else. So I also didn't video it, but I added a sound effects for the knife wound right here. There we go. There's no sound effects here. So adding text is the final thing I'm going to do, but it's basically it's very much the same as what I covered in the flat media tutorials. But I'll do one frame that has a lot of text to give you an idea how to time it well. In this scene here, which is right here, Thanos says, "You have my respect, Stark. When I'm done, half of humanity will still be alive." And then I want the stones to glow and the whir to come out, and then he would say, "I hope they remember you." So what I'm going to do is I'll go back to the layer stack here. So after the in that frame here, after the frame black frames come up, I want him to deliver those 2 lines before the glow appears. So I'm going to click right here and then add the text. Best way to do is like what I did here is I type it out on some word processing app. Actually, I wonder if I can fit all of that into there. If not, then I'll do it in 2 sections. Then I'll copy it in here. Again, if I put asterisks around certain words, they become bold. I'm going to make it 6 point, maybe 7 point. I'm going to position it. I'm going to give the padding less so I can make the bubble tighter. And then the tail, make it a 2-point tail, and the borders like 1 point. Yeah, let's split it up into 2 bubbles so to give it a bit of a pause in his speech. So you have my respect, Stark, which is great. I think in future upgrades we're gonna have defaults. So if you do the text once, all the inputs will be the same in the next text that you put in, so you don't. This just makes it less repetitive. I'm gonna put a weight after this, and automatically removes after 1. So what I'm gonna do is add. I'm not gonna go back to the layer stack. I'm gonna add the second thing he says right away. I'm gonna choose the same values. Border is 1, and I'm gonna copy. When I'm done, half of humanity will still be alive. Copy, paste. If you don't like how the line breaks are, you can adjust it yourself. You can actually put in line breaks in the text like this, just using a return key. Actually, I'm going to choose a curved tail. All right, that was great. And I'll input the same values again, and then put a weight there. I think I've got everything. And so I've got the frame with the panel with the frame on it, and then the 2 text bubbles come up. You have to click on them to advance it, and then that's when this the stones light up, and then the sound effects of the whir. So I'm going to click here because I want to add text after that where he says, "I hope to remember you." So this, I'm going to take this weight off on the word here, and then add a text layer where he says, "I hope they remember you." And I'll input the same values. Padding is 5. Actually, I think it was 7 point, so. All right. And duration of 0.5, opacity of 0, ease in and out, and then I'll put the weight here. All right. So let's save this comic. I put in all the other text as well. So let's look at it in its entirety. All right. I'll do full screen. There you go. I hope you liked this video on how to make layered panel-to-panel comics in the Comic Machine. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and hit the notification button. Thanks very much.